Today we're jumping into the desktop to start exploring constraint layouts. I've got this little wireframe that I put together here real quick just to demonstrate some of the features of constraint layouts. My next video is going to cover a little bit more detail on actually using guidelines. So if you already know the basics of constraint layouts, feel free to skip ahead to that one. This video though, we're going to be building this view. So here we are over here in the editor, and I created a new project with an empty activity. My empty activity actually came in with the constraint layout already added. And if you're on the latest version of Android Studio, yours should as well too if you keep all the default settings. Alright, today we're going to be focusing purely on this view. I will switch over to the text view and show you what it generates, but I'm really going to spend most of my time here to show you the basics of what constraint layouts are. If you've used Android in the past, you will probably remember relative layouts. And if you do, constraint layouts are very similar to those, except relative layouts have some inherent qualities about them that actually make them less performant as you get deeper down in the hierarchy. Constraint layouts actually do away with that. Anyway, let's jump into there. And if you remember what we started with, we actually had an image view here in the middle. And I'm just going to pick my cat image that I created. And I'm going to be working in landscape mode. I am going to make this a little bit smaller. And you can see that. Make this a little bit squared up. So where I've placed this right now, this won't actually do anything because I haven't constrained it. It will run, but when I run it, it'll actually end up in the top left. So if you're new to constraint layouts and you're doing it for the very first time, you may wonder why you're placing everything correct, yet nothing is showing up in the right location after you run it. So the easiest way to add them is you click on the circle, and here I'm going to drag and assign a layout constraint all four directions. I'm going to point to something over here on the right side. Let's say that for some reason that we wanted this to be biased one way or the other. You can actually do that with these bias controls. And if you notice, those will actually generate values in the text view as well. Let's actually make this a little bit smaller to give us a little bit more room. We also had a header that, notice I'm constraining it to the top, I'm constraining it to the left, and I'm constraining it to the right. Again, that will auto-center it. One interesting thing here is it has a margin of 8. I'm actually going to increase that to, let's make that 16. And let's change the text here to something like Pretty Kitty. And I think that text should probably be larger too. So notice here I can just change my text size to like 24. And then we're good. There were a couple things that we had. We had text on all four sides of this image. And I'm going to do that by dragging over a text view from the palette, constraining it to the right side of this, or to the left side of this photo, the right side of the text view, and you can see that it's constrained here. If you want a little bit more margin, you can add it. Now what do I constrain the top and bottom to? You can constrain the top and bottom to the top of the cat image and the bottom of the cat image. Things should start clicking now for how you're actually going to lay out the rest of this. So this is left view. And we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to constrain this to the right side of the cat, top and bottom here. We're going to change this to, we're just going to change this to right view. Remember, you can also update the ID attribute, which you would do if you're going to be updating these and accessing them in code. You wouldn't want them to be text view 8, for example. So let's do one here at the bottom. Again, I'm going to constrain it to the bottom of the cat. And then now we're actually going to do the left of the cat and the right of the cat. Now it gets a little bit hard sometimes to find the right circle there. Just know that you can zoom in more if you need to. And we're going to change this text to bottom view. We're going to add one more text view here. This again is getting a little bit harder to click, but we should have plenty of room. You can see that I clicked there, but I didn't actually let go in the right place, so the constraint broke. If you want to get rid of a constraint, you literally can just click on it and it will break it. And we're going to call this top view. So constraint layouts really are the recommended way for performance reasons to actually do most of your layouts now. And if you find a reason to not use them, I'd be curious for you to let me know. The only thing that I actually still prefer using traditional like linear layouts for are things like stacks of items, you know, so like repeated things. You can see my back button here, I've constrained it to the left and I've constrained it to the bottom. You need to have two constraints, one on one of the horizontal and one on one of the vertical. That's the minimum. Now I could have all four, for example, if I wanted to. So let's add another button here. I'm going to take this button and we're going to call this one like continue. So if we had like, or maybe we'll just call it next. So it'll be like the next cat photo. I'm moving it over so I can see it a little bit better. And again, if you want more padding, I can increase that by 16. Maybe we want a little bit more space around the screen. And you can see here that we have now created that view. So what all code was generated? You can see that here we've got the margins that were created. We've got the constraints that were created. One thing that I always found very interesting is how the width and height are set. These are things that you may end up having to come here to modify once you start doing more Android development, specifically for the images. So this text view, for example, you can see that we've got a constraint end to end of, start to start of, top to top of. Let's take a look at this one. This is text view 8 that we talked about. It is constrained to the bottom of image view 2, which it happens to be our cat. And it is constrained to the right of, which is the end. So you can think of the end as the right, and you can think of the start as the left. And then it's also constrained to the top. So everything here is generated, and you could type this code in and have the same result that we have over here for a Pretty Kitty UI. Hopefully this has been helpful at getting you started with the basics of constraint views. Remember that you have the bias option and you have the padding option. The next video, like I said, we'll get into using guidelines to better position things in other parts of your screen. And until next time, everyone, keep coding.